This episode is brought to you by Merrill. We all have goals, and we all want to get to those goals, whether that's saving for a home renovation, that once-in-a-lifetime trip to your favourite Grand Prix, or even retirement. We all want a straightforward path to those goals, but the real world doesn't usually work that way. Merrill understands that. That's why with a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalised plan and a clear path forward. And having the bull at your back helps your whole financial life move with you. So when your plans change, Merrill's with you every step of the way. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, member SIPC.
This episode is supported by Merrill. With a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalized plan for your financial goals. And when plans change, Merrill's with you every step of the way. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, member SIPC.
Etsy knows these aren't the sounds of holiday gifting.
Oh.
Well, not the ones you're hoping for.
Ah, okay. Thank you?
You want squeals of delight.
Yes!
And spontaneously written songs of joy.
I am so happy. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
To get those, make everyone on your list feel heard with gifts like personalized jewelry, custom artwork, vintage pieces, and home decor. For original gifts that say, I get you, Etsy has it.
The Athletic.
Happy new MotoGP year. 2025 has started already in MotoGP terms. The Barcelona test has taken place. We've seen Marc Marquez on a very, very red Ducati. We've seen Jorge Martin on an Aprilia and lots of other new faces and new places and people who did and didn't have the upgrades they were expecting. So here is a bonus episode of the Race MotoGP podcast with me, Matt Beer, Val Khorounzhiy, Megan White and Simon Patterson. Val and Simon still in the Barcelona press room. Simon apologises. He might come and go a little bit because in his words, it's the last day of school, last chance to see all these people in the MotoGP paddock for, well, who you've seen about 3,000 times this year, but last chance for a few months, isn't it? Must be quite a fun atmosphere tonight.
Yeah, it is. It is. Although, because my life is what it is, most of them just come to hug me to tell me to hug my wife and my donkey on their behalf. So it's much more about my wife and the donkey than it is about me, really, at this point in the year. But there you go.
Fantastic. How are you both doing for energy? Because listeners, when we recorded the post-race podcast on Sunday night, that was a good energy-filled podcast. And then the second we pressed the stop button on the recording, it was like I pulled the plug out of Val and Simon. They just kind of visibly deflated. How are you guys doing?
I was starting to flag, so I've just downed a coffee and a bag of Haribo, and I am set for this podcast.
Val disagrees.
I'm not doing great, but it won't stop me from speaking way too much anyway.
I wouldn't want it any other way. Right, we're going to whiz through all 5 manufacturers in what we hope will be quite a quick, sharp podcast, but like Val says, it's not going to be, is it? Talking about what's been new today, how they've got on. Obviously, as I imagine you're aware, a lot of riders are not really allowed to speak to the media properly when they're technically under contract to their previous manufacturer still. So we didn't hear from everybody, but we've got our own observations. These guys had their ears to the ground in the paddock. In Simon's case, he's literally been chasing Jorge Martin around the paddock with a t-shirt, which you might have seen on our social media by now. I'd like to start with Ducati. We'll give Martin and his first day at Aprilia due attention, but the most striking sight of the test day has been Marc Marquez. We've said all season, Marc in factory red. It's become a catchphrase. He took that very seriously today, didn't he? He could not have been more red in his sponsor-free kit and his all-red Ducati. Simon, what's your take on how Marc's first day in the factory team went? I've seen plenty of pictures of him and Gigi Dall'Igna laughing, so I think it was a good one.
Whenever I went into pit lane this morning, him and Davide Tardozzi were hugging and like arm wrestling in the pit box and abusing each other, which was quite funny. The bike is like, it's not Ducati red, it's Marc Marquez red, which is quite a good statement to make after all the "are we going to get Marc in red" comments that we've went through this year. It was visually offensive. It was so bright. Like that thing under the floodlights of Qatar would leave people with like blind spots. But it he had a fairly solid first day in the end, and there was no drama. He kind of admitted that being back in a factory team was a difficult thing, and not a difficult thing, but a change, that he had to go back to the engineers telling him exactly what they were going to do all day, rather than him and Frankie Carcetti cobbling together some sort of a plan and going around and having fun with it. The bike, he says, he was a bit canny, as Mark is, where the bike was better in some places, weaker in another. Didn't want to commit too much to anything in particular, but I think a fairly solid opening day, really. Nothing dramatic, nothing spectacular, just good.
He's been a two-step jump, of course. He's been on the 2023 Ducati throughout 2024. Now he's got the 2025 version. Val, we had some hints from Gigi Linea the night before the test about what's going to be different on that bike, but the vibe is not much, potentially.
Not much, but also, a lot at the same time. I mean, there's been a lot of talk this weekend, as particularly when Ducati tester Michele Pirro showed up to ride Fabio Di Giannantonio's injury vacated GP23, a bike that he said he hadn't ridden in basically like over 2 years at this point, because obviously he gets all this stuff in advance. Yes, he's the tester, he gets the track ready, and clearly was a bit aghast at the size of the difference, the performance difference, but also the feeling difference. I think it is pretty clear that the GP24, GP25 step isn't that big, but it's not a big step in performance, but it does sound like there's quite a different feeling coming from it. Certainly that was the way Pecco Bagnaia spoke about it. I asked him whether would he feel comfortable taking the GP25 into battle already tomorrow if it came to that, if there was a race tomorrow. Thank goodness there isn't, but if there was a race tomorrow, would he like to race it? And what he said was, I could, but right now I'd still pick the GP24. The GP24, brakes better. The GP25 is, already more stable in the high speed. The GP24 would be stronger here right now, but of course it's, it's been refined for a full season. And the GP25 has, a higher ceiling. That's familiar Ducati chat at the end of a test, any test really. But I mean, it sounds good. It sounds reasonable. It's just, Gigi Linea was so on the money with his prediction last year. Yeah. And obviously he would be. He's the guy who designed the bike, so I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. I shouldn't even call it a prediction. He's made the thing. But you never know how it goes on track. But he said that the 24 would be a big step over the 23. I think so it proved. There's going to be, arguments as to how much it proved, but I think the consensus is so it proved. So if he tells me that the 25 is a pigeon step, relatively speaking, in certain areas, like maybe a bit more top end, maybe a bit more this, a bit more that, I'm inclined to believe him.
There was a 0.056 gap between Pecco Bagnaia and Marc Marquez today in Bagnaia's favour. Should we read anything into that whatsoever, or do we just go, no, testing, different programs, different levels of trying? A strong head shake, Val.
No, testing lap times, especially like it seems here, are just complete, utter nonsense. I mean, we had like only a handful of riders run to their weekend pace. The track maybe is still a little bit weird, and it's going to be weird at that time of a season anyway. And we've been bit too many times trying to read into a single day of testing and the lap times it produces. I mean, people are just not going to do qualifying sims. Why would they? Qualifying sims is what you do on, PM or AM of day 3. Yeah. Not day 1. There's too much stuff to do on day 1. So I feel like I'm maybe not trying hard enough in dismissing, reading into any of the lap times. And certainly, maybe something is there, but certainly don't look at the 100th or the 10th. If it's a 100th or a 10th or 2/10 or 3/10, that's not anything.
Just to pick up on, I'm Megan from home, not Megan from Barcelona today. Just to pick up on what Val was saying as well, obviously Mark, speaking after the test, said, like, being back at the factory team, you're in the hands of the engineers. Like, he had so much to do. He said, like, he didn't try the new tyre because he's just had, such a busy schedule. So, yeah, he's got plenty on his plate, so I don't think we need to read into that time too much.
I asked Alex Marquez, as obviously, the test stopper, whether he would be able to replicate the lap time that he set today, because he has the GP24 in his possession now, and that's what he set the test stopping lap time on, whether he would be able to replicate it on the GP23. And what followed was a shrug of the shoulders, but also a very knowing, in his position, the whole, he's the focal point, which is not to say that Marc isn't the focal point, but Marc has factory rider development stuff to do. Alex Marquez and other satellite riders, or riders who don't have as much to try, well, they can focus on performance. So right there, that immediately skews the picture of the day immediately. Because, MotoGP riders get faster when they ride more and more with the same package instead of trying new stuff. So, don't look at the table too much.
Yeah, that is fair enough. I did think livery-wise, I did wonder if there was a slight psychological play going on, because Pecco Bagnaia, on the day when Marquez turns up in his team, Pecco's got a white bike looking a bit ghostly for most of the day, albeit quite cool, and Marquez could not be more red and more Ducati. Well, it's Marquez red, not Ducati red. In fact, actually, Val, in your assessment, it was Velma from Scooby-Doo 2 red. Simon?
I'd like to point out that is, we worked it out that there's an age gap thing going on here, because we think the Velma from Scooby-Doo 2 thing is a reference to Britney Spears in the Oops, I Did It Again video, but I'm 10 years older than Val, so I know the original reference. I feel old, but that is, So basically, Britney Spears reference.
Listeners, insert your own Britney Spears or Velma from Scooby-Doo 2. Or also Megan's trousers that she's wearing today appear to be the same colour as that as well. Moving away from the Marquez brothers, over the other side of the Gresini garage to Alex Marquez, and on Marc's old bike, is now Fermin Aldeguer. Regular listeners from the end of 2023 will remember that Val banged on endlessly about Fermin Aldeguer at the end of his Moto2 season and convinced Ducati to sign him, it seems. Val, you have to lead this. How did Fermin get on his first day on the MotoGP bike? I saw him headbutt his way through his windscreen, which was quite an impressive end to his day.
Yeah, look fine. I mean, all the three rookies crashed. So that includes Fermin, that includes Aldeguer, that includes Somkiat Chantra. And I think the final gaps were something like Fermin 3/10 to then 4 or 5/10 to Somkiat. And I mean, you'd think those are also kind of the machinery gaps, basically.
Yeah.
Thereabout. Maybe the Aprilia is not 3/10 off the Ducati, but it's rookie lap times on day one. Can't really look too much into it. It's really, really, really difficult to say something right now. The last time I tried to forecast a rookie season off a rookie test, I was like, Fabio Di Giannantonio will definitely be Rookie of the Year, whereas Marco Bezzecchi is struggling. Bezzecchi ended up obliterating him that season, so that was deeply unfortunate. Didn't love that.
You were predicting 2024, you just didn't realise it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, they caught up to my wisdom. What I will say is that, of course, I asked Gigi Dall'Igna about Fermin.
Obviously.
No surprise there, I guess. And Dall'Igna's assessment was basically, whatever you guys are worrying about this Moto2 season, we still have full faith. He's got some really good tools in his locker. There's stuff that he needs to improve. He didn't say what stuff, but I would not be surprised if the mental side of things is the stuff. But yeah, there's stuff that he still needs to improve. In a couple of years' time, he'll be up there in the championship fights. That's bold, man. I've never even said that. So, I'll default
literally
to...
2 years in, he'll be a title contender. Is that what Dall'Igna is predicting?
I mean, unless I made it up in my head. But I don't think so.
Just make sure it wasn't what you were dreaming. And you mentioned as well earlier that Marquez was taking quite a keen interest in how Fermin Aldeguer's day had been. Yeah,
but it's just, I think, sort of a friendly debrief. It speaks to the fact that Marc was quite a good mood at the end of the day, because instead of scurrying out of the media center, he just stuck around for a handful of minutes chatting to Fermin while Ducati tester Pirro is sitting at the table waiting for his media session to start. Not they were being impolite, but at one point Pirro also joined in their chat. And we're standing there waiting to start talking to Pirro. It's fine, it's all good, because sometimes, honestly, in the media center, when those guys talk, you also do get to listen in, which is quite nice. Unless it was in Spanish, and it was today, so not so good for me, but I'm sure good for some people.
Learn Spanish, Val.
That's a good point. Well made. But I mean, yeah.
You're doing all right with German.
This episode is brought to you by Merrill. We all have goals, and we all want to get to those goals, whether that's saving for a home renovation, that once-in-a-lifetime trip to your favourite Grand Prix, or even retirement. We all want a straightforward path to those goals, but the real world doesn't usually work that way. Merrill understands that. That's why with the dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalised plan and a clear path forward. And having the bull at your back helps your whole financial life move with you. So when your plans change, Merrill's with you every step of the way. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, member SIPC.
This episode is supported by Merrill. With a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalized plan for your financial goals. And when plans change, Merrill's with you every step of the way. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, member SIPC.
Your time and expertise are valuable. And with professionals spending nearly half the workweek on written communication, focus is one of the most important things to have at work. With Grammarly as your AI writing partner, you can stay focused and get through your work faster with relevant, real-time suggestions wherever you write. As a journalist and podcast host, I'm constantly writing and rewriting copy and drawing up scripts. It's part of the job, and Grammarly helps make it faster. It's got some really cool features like tone suggestions to help you strike the right balance between direct and friendly in work emails. Plus, Grammarly has a ton of other great features like advanced spelling, grammar, punctuation, and conciseness suggestions to ensure your writing is professional, mistake-free, and clear. And best of all, Grammarly works across 500,000 apps and websites, allowing you to work smarter, not longer. For 15 years, Grammarly has helped professionals do more with their writing. So what are you waiting for? Get more done with Grammarly. Download Grammarly for free at grammarly.com/podcast. That's grammarly.com/podcast.
On to the world champion who made his debut on an Aprilia. Before we talk about his day, I want to talk about his evening, though, because at the end of the session, Simon, I believe, actually chased Jorge Martin around the paddock, holding one of the race's Satellite Riders Can Win World Championships t-shirts. And not only did he pose with it for us, he also edited the other one, didn't he?
Yeah, one of each. And we now have, I now have a Can Win Championships t-shirt with a little bit of creative sign writing, which is quite nice.
Yes.
But he took it, found it very amusing. It took it in good faith that we had made both t-shirts.
Yes. So as Simon's referencing, you'll see this on the Race's MotoGP social media channels, as well as posing with the Satellite Riders Can Win Championships t-shirt. Jorge also edited the Can't Win with a pen and then signed it. So absolute genius. We really appreciate that, Jorge Martin. If you want one of those for yourself, you can't get the edited one. That is one of a kind. I don't know what we'll do with that yet. I guess Simon has it. But if you want one of your own, go to shop.the-race.com, look for the collections, then statements, and they are in there. If you're part of the Race Members Club, and you can join that by finding us on Patreon or going to the-race.com/members-club, you get a special discount code each month for money off in the shop as well. Also means if you're part of the Members Club, you get so many bonus podcasts, chances to influence this podcast with questions, and loads more stuff, including our new MotoGP Revisited season. You can vote on Patreon if we're going to be reliving all of 2006 or all of 2015. Enough plugging. Back to Jorge Martin's actual day, not just posing with our merch. Simon, you go first on this bit as well. How did his first day on the Aprilia go? What was his vibe? Obviously, I assume he couldn't talk about it.
He couldn't talk about it at all. He was one of the 4 riders banned by their previous manufacturer from talking to us at all. So nothing from him or Marco Bezzecchi, nothing from Jack Miller, and nothing from Enea Bastianini. But my impression of his day, looking at it, is that it went better than I expected. I didn't think he'd be quite as comfortable looking. I didn't think he'd crash, and I think the crash is a good sign because it was a proper I'm going to push and see what happens here crash, which is, part of finding the limit. All in all, it looked like a pretty good day. The vibe inside the Aprilia box is fairly content. I think, all round a decent debut and a better one than I'd imagine not just me expected.
Yeah, timing-wise, not top 10 in the times, but like you say, on track, from what I saw of the footage, he looked genuinely comfortable. And obviously, he won the World Championship 2 days ago. He's going to be happy. But you would imagine, we've seen enough riders in the past get to what is usually the Valencia Tuesday test, get on their new bike, and it's like, this is not going to, you can tell straight away. Valentino Rossi's first taste with Ducati was a little bit like that, wasn't it? You couldn't really, I think it was Jorge Lorenzo's first taste of a Honda not great as well. You get a vibe.
Was anyone's first taste of a Honda in the last 10 years okay?
Yeah, Paul's. Then the rest of it didn't work, but Paul Espargaro's first experience with a Honda.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
We've got a winter to talk about how Martin will get on an Aprilia. But little question from Goose in the members club that he asked at the end of the race episode question punt the other day. We've been quite sceptical about what Aprilia is going to do next year because Aprilia has gone off the pace as the season's gone on. We assume that Martin is swapping the championship winning bike for, unhappier times. But Goose points out that, as we saw in a recent podcast, Pramac didn't start winning until Martin came along. We could give Martin more credit for bringing Pramac forward. We could do the same with Aprilia. Plus, as Goose points out, Aleix Espargaro and Martin are family. You can guarantee there'll be some off-the-books conversations will be had when Martin's got questions about that bike. So, Megan, have we been a bit too sceptical, do you think, about what Martin can do with Aprilia? I stuck in a column on the race about how I thought all the new team switchers would do. I thought Martin should actually have a punt at going for the championship next year and think it might even be realistic. What are your expectations for him?
The first thing that popped into my head when you started that sentence was that it could have ended after we've been too sceptical, because mostly we have, about anything, any
Speak
given thing. Yeah, maybe me. No, I think it's really hard to tell still. Like, I think obviously a lot of that skepticism is based on the way that the Aprilia has been the second half of the year. So it's not entirely unfounded, but then we don't know what they're going to bring. Well, we don't know really what they brought today because we didn't hear from Martin. We don't know what they're going to bring to the first test. We don't know what they're going to bring to the second test. So I think it is still a bit of an unknown. I'm still on the fence as to how well that's going to go. As Simon said, today looked promising, but lots of things can look promising and then never get off the ground. So I think it's still too early to tell, really. I'm still, if I had to pick a side, I would still err on the side of next year will be a lot less good than this year, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, Aprilia did tell us a fair bit about today. They also wheeled out the new technical director, Fabiano Sterlachini, the ex-KTM, ex-Ducati man they have, who's replaced Romano Bessiano, who is off to Honda. Sterlachini, he's never going to open all the cards about what the first touch was for Martin with the bike, but it sounds like it was how it looks, and that it was pretty good. But then again, as has been rightly pointed out, you can, the mood depends on the championship, doesn't it? You won the championship, so that high is going to last for a considerable amount of time. For me, it was interesting that they had, they had a limited amount of 2025s here, the 2025 prototypes, and those prototypes went to Martin and Marco Bezzecchi, which you would say is, I guess, logical. Martin's crashed one of them, but then it quickly got fixed up and sent out, which meant they didn't give one to Raul Fernandez, the only rider in the Aprilia roster with knowledge of the 23, 24, and would it have been useful to have him also run a bit on the 25? I mean, I asked Sterlachini about that. He just he fronted up. It's kind of a familiar Aprilia issue in that in trying to accelerate the pace at which they bring new stuff. Aprilia has never been the outright quickest at that. When it brings stuff's pretty good, but it has never been the outright quickest, and it's not the richest manufacturer in MotoGP. So he's fronted up that as part of this acceleration that's going on, we couldn't bring the 4. We had to do the 2. It would have been nice to hear from Raul about the 25 today, but no dice, and it is probably telling how much faith there is in both Martin and Bezzecchi immediately, that they're the ones who tried the new bike immediately.
Yeah, also Fernandez's form when he was switching from the 23 to the 24 during the season was ropey, really, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I feel like he's got to kind of prove a bit before Aprilia gives him the best kit for a little while. You mentioned Sterlachini came from KTM. the big new thing at KTM in the factory team was not actually really that new. Pedro Acosta has been on kind of the kit he was on today for most of the season, really, hasn't he, in terms of getting more and more factory favours as it was obvious where he was going. Anything to report from Acosta's day, Simon?
The quote of the day was the bit that made me laugh. Someone asked him what the bike needed for next year, and he kind of looked at them and went, more power, more turning, more braking, more accelerating, and laughed, and then looked at them and just went, I want it all, baby.
Let's say Pedro.
I was going to say, so he's happy with the start system.
No, but it wasn't a dunk on KTM. It was it was.
No, it wasn't. It was just every bike needs to be better everywhere all the time. It was just one of those comments. He didn't make any massive changes. He had 5 different fairings to try, so he was working his way through the aero upgrades. But he was just, it's a bit of an evolutionary thing for them. KTM haven't made a big step here today, like no one really has. That was the thing. Like today, really hammered home the thing about there's no. Gone is the era of having a 24 bike and then a 25 bike. We're in constant evolution now. These things are always in flux, and today kind of really, really hammered that through. I think the only people that mentioned an upgraded part that they weren't able to use earlier in the season that was notably better was the Ducatis referencing having a bit more power out of the engine. And then everything else that was talked about today essentially was just gradual upgrade stuff that they'd been doing all season anyway.
On a similar theme to Goose's point about Martin maybe just being the thing that Aprilia needs to elevate itself regardless of upgrades, Northern Bastard in the members club said KTM made a step this year and made their bike as good as last year's Ducati. Could a slightly bigger leap this winter, plus having Pedro Acosta, actually make them contenders? Is Acosta what KTM, the last step, effectively?
Well, yes. I mean, I take issue with the last step because the last step implies that they've made all the other steps. And
fair.
No, I don't think they have. And, look, I'm no engineer. I don't know what they have cooking up. I would struggle to tell you what exactly they need, like what part of the track they're really struggling on. I mean, here it was the final sector consistently, but overall across the calendar, the KTM has sometimes felt like it's sometimes it's felt like it's falling into a pattern and then falling out of that pattern. It's been a difficult bike to understand over its time in MotoGP. So I went to the Brad Binder session today and sort of tried to think of the most polite way of asking. So you've just described really minor stuff that you worked on, like really minor. I think like electronics all day, right? And it's not minor, obviously, but it's not a new bike. Don't you need a new bike? Don't you need like a total revolution? And I like in the most polite way, without saying that the current thing you have is obviously not good enough or whatever. But that's not his messaging. His messaging is we need to piecemeal this. We can't do this with a revolution new package. We need to just piece by piece, little by little. And I mean, you would know better than I would.
The big new thing in KTM overall was the completely fresh Tech 3 lineup of Enea Bastianini and Maverick Viñales. Bastianini contributed the day's biggest shunt, which is one of those shunts that starts kind of, not great, but then as the bike bounces its way over the gravel, ends up in tire wall, it gets quite bad. Simon, what was your take on Tech 3's day with Viñales and Bastianini?
There's a picture floating around of Enea Bastianini's bike, and it looks like it's about twice the length a MotoGP bike should be because the front and the rear is basically broken off. That was a big one. That was a pretty much a destroyed bike. Bastianini wasn't allowed to speak to us. We didn't really hear from him afterwards. Maverick Viñales was, and it will come to absolute no shock whatsoever to regular listeners of the podcast to discover that he loves the fact that the KTM is really good at starting. I'd basically kind of target fixated a little bit on we did practice starts, and the practice starts are amazing, and now I can be a complete MotoGP rider because I have the final piece that I was missing from being able to start the race. I doubt it's as simple as that, Maverick, but time will tell. It will certainly hopefully prevent him from going P5 to P20 in the first corner every race. If it helps make up for whatever it is he was doing wrong on the Aprilia. But beyond that, he had a fairly solid day. He was a little bit quicker than I expected him to be. He adapted really well. He looked really comfortable really early on. A fairly all right day for them as well, despite the fact that they probably started the day with 4 2025 bikes and ended it with 3.
Again, full credit to Aprilia, because Maverick just was free to discuss everything. Say whatever he liked, and as part of that, we now get to talk about Aprilia being bad at starts. So that's the downside of this very nice, very gentle, very smart policy.
I should say that the standard rule for these debriefs, whenever a manufacturer lets a rider talk whenever they've gone to someone else, is that you can't make direct comparisons of the bike. And a few times today, press officers did kind of step in and say, you need to, not that you can't ask that question, you need to ask that question in a different way. And Maverick did a very good job of explaining the differences without explaining the differences, just explaining how it was better.
He also topped the top speed chart, and generally his initial impression is that this bike suits him better than the Aprilia. Just is better for him. And I think there was talk very much at times during his Aprilia tenure that it's not been intuitive for him, that he never fully 100% gelled with it in the same way that maybe with some of his previous bikes. I mean, maybe the second year Suzuki, I guess, would be the best example of that. My takeaway from this test, like the takeaway image that I have burned in my brain right now, is Jorge Martin, Maverick Vinales pulling out of the pit lane to do practice starts. Or at least, I mean, Jorge Martin was doing practice starts. I'm not sure if Maverick was, but I imagine so. Jorge doing one, it looking abysmal, like horrible, just absolutely no bueno. And Vinales looking over his shoulder at what just happened, without really, without any body language, but I know what you were thinking there, Maverick. I'm in your brain there. I know it. Yeah. Jorge Martin, one of the best starters in MotoGP, a guy whose starts won him the championship, is about to show us where Aprilia is in that regard, and my suspicion, it's not in a great place.
Yeah, might have to do a little bit more work on the braking for turn 1, even more than next year, Jorge Martin.
This episode is supported by Merrill. With a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalized plan for your financial goals. And when plans change, Merrill's with you every step of the way. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer. Registered investment advisor. Member SIPC.
As you've probably heard by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code The Athletic. Make your first deposit of at least $10. Place your first bet on any game and claim your voucher for a 1-year subscription to The Athletic. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., Mississippi, New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager.
This episode is supported by Merrill. With a dedicated Merrill advisor, you get a personalized plan for your financial goals. And when plans change, Merrill's with you every step of the way. Go to ml.com/bullish to learn more. Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do? Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer. Registered investment advisor. Member SIPC.
Into Japanese Cup territory to finish off Yamaha and Honda. The big thing at Yamaha, loads of Yamahas. Yamahas everywhere. Pramac has wheeled down to the Yamaha part of the pit lane and got its hands on 2 of them, for Miguel Oliveira and Jack Miller. Val or Simon, who fancies summarising Pramac's first day with a bike that is not going to be winning a world championship right now?
I don't want to speak too much about Miller's day because he hasn't had a chance to present a case for the defense, and that's not his fault. Lap time wise, it didn't look great. Like it looked like it took a little bit of time to get to a respectable lap time, and in the end, it wasn't really there. But again, I was really, really worried about Jack Miller's KTM stint coming out of testing, and then he was actually quite fast right away, and then he wasn't. But the testing wasn't reflective of that. Testing was a mirage.
Another rider catching up with your prediction a little bit later.
Yes, but I'm not going to take any credit for that at all. I won't take credit for the DJ Antonio thing either. I'm an idiot. I clearly read that test wrong. But Oliveira, I thought looked real good. I really was genuinely impressed. He seemed on it in terms of lap times right away. He seemed comfortable on the bike right away. And, coming to us after the session, he confirmed that he found the Yamaha that, it used to be super rider friendly, but now riders say isn't. Oliveira was like, nah, still is a rider friendly bike. He just said, but that's not what we want. We want it to be performant. It doesn't really matter if it's rider friendly or not. We want the lap times. So generally, I think he had a good day, and it's not to the level of when he had the hand-me-down Aprilia in Valencia, and he looked like a serious problem for the rest of the grid, and then it never fully materialized because of injuries. Maybe not to that extent, but looked good. Looked a good day.
And one thing I will say about Miguel is he's kind of heart on sleeve a bit. When he's had a bad day, and there was none of that vibe about it today. He genuinely sounded quite all right with how things had went. Not startled that it was terrible or amazing, but it was pretty okay. That was very much the vibe from him.
The thing he wants improved is the braking. I'm guessing rear contact. Yamaha riders have been complaining about rear contact a fair bit. But when they asked him what's the bad part of the bike, what's the worst one, he was like, well, I didn't like the all black color. Otherwise, fantastic. I mean, I think that's a message about the day.
That's got to be the most positive noise about a Yamaha that's been made in quite some time. But
I mean, arguably no, because Fabio Quartararo was pretty happy with how the day went as well. And I think this is maybe what we're seeing here is Miguel Oliveira has jumped onto the best Yamaha in a very long time. And maybe that's part of the reason why it's positive. But the bike is getting better. Fabio kind of sounded like Santa had come. Like he was really upbeat about where it was. There's still a few more bits and pieces to come, so it's still not, the 2025 bike, because like we say, it's constant evolution and whatever, but they're not sounding doom and gloom at all.
Let's mention Alex Rins then too, because let's complete the set, yay. So he's still, the messaging from him is still that, the M1 isn't quite right for him personally, and he expects that, because there's going to be a big step in Sepang, and I say big step, I mean big change. I don't know if it's going to be a step, maybe it's 3 seconds worse. Entirely possible, but so Rins is waiting for a bike that's more towards him. And I'm slightly concerned because I've heard that from riders before, and you kind of feel like maybe it doesn't come sometimes. It came for Jorge Lorenzo at Ducati, but otherwise I can't think of many great examples. But let's see. I mean, we've got a lot of time until then, so I'm going to repeat that thought in multiple podcasts coming up.
Once or twice.
Yeah.
My favourite Yamaha comment of the weekend regarding the bike and where the development is someone asked Jack Miller, back when he was still a KTM rider and could still speak to us, if he'd asked his best friend in the world, Cal Crutchlow, about the bike. And he basically said, no, it's a waste of time. We all know that Cal's a bullshit merchant, and there's no point in listening to him because it'll all be lies anyway.
It's a slight paraphrase. there. It's just a little
only very slight.
Yeah. What has the vibe been for Pramac from what you've seen today as a team? Because they've had this amazing high of just winning the championship with Martin. This Yamaha deal does secure their long-term future. It's a very lucrative one. We've debated on the podcast before whether Pramac could have held its place in the Ducati pecking order in the same way, but they've just swapped winning a championship and winning the team's championship last year for what is undoubtedly a project where if they get either rider on the podium next year, that will be just enormous. What's your take on what the move will have been at Pramac this morning, starting this trudge, basically?
I genuinely get the vibe that it's a bit like, well, we did the job. We're never going to achieve that again. That was a one-off and we were the best in the world. So why not take on a new challenge? And they all seem quite fired up by it this morning. Like there was a bit of a vibe of, yeah, let's go. This is new chapter here. And yeah, I don't think anyone is like heartbroken about what's happened. I think they're a bit like, yeah, this is good. We can do this.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say that they're sellouts or whatever. I'm just, maybe they were going to win another Riders title or whatever. I mean, look, entirely possible because they stay. Maybe Jorge Martin doesn't stay because he needs a works deal, but maybe they figure out some other top line rider for one of those seats. But they seem fine with their lot. It would have hurt a lot more if the Riders Championship slipped away. It didn't. So, and the challenge is interesting and it is fun, and they will be treated as an extension of the factory team, clearly, while also being handsomely rewarded for it. And, the project getting somewhere, I imagine. So, yeah, not bad.
On that topic then, one last Yamaha point from Angelina in the Members Club. Yamaha's been looking decent these last couple of races, she says. Can we hope for a more successful season in 2025? And Angelina's hope is maybe some actual fights at Ducatis for a podium or even a win. What do you reckon, Megan? I mean, you were quite struck by how buoyant Quartararo sounded today. Is this in the territory where a podium or win next year is starting to feel realistic?
As a totally unbiased journalist, I would say I hope so, because Fabio's a joy, and the way he's been quite like despondent has been quite like tough to watch. And to be fair, I was expecting him to be a bit more like comme ci comme ça today, but actually, like, you go back over what he said, and he was pretty positive. He put in a good lap time, which was quite funny because he said, "Oh, it's only a test, but I forgot," like, because it was so good to see his name near the top again. He said that they're still far away, but he had good pace. He did some good laps. He was pleased with the revised chassis. The traction, as Val said, or Simon said, I can't remember, but is coming. So actually, like, there are lots of positives at Fabio's end. And I think, as we saw several times this year, towards the end of this year, where he put in some really, really good performances, he's finishing like 6th or 7th when the next Yamaha is way back down the standings. It's like, actually, Fabio has had some really good moments this year. And I think if Yamaha can give him a bit more of what he needs next year, then yeah, he probably would be in the fight for a podium. Even if it's, I know there was a sprint podium he got and then it was removed. But, there's no reason to say that won't happen again next year.
At the other end of the happiness scale on a Japanese bike today, not for the first in the season, was Joan Mir. Megan, stick with you for this. Mir was one of the first people we heard from post-session, and it wasn't pretty, was it?
It was just sad. Like, you think back to a few years ago, and then you listen to that, and it's like, just not happy at all. Like, the stuff that he was trying today was stuff he'd already tried. None of the new stuff was ready on time. And it's just like, how long can this carry on? Like, how long do you stay doing that when every time we hear from Joan, he just sounds miserable? It's really hard. Like, from a psychological point of view, that must be so difficult for him to just keep going when it doesn't feel like he's getting anything back, or as much back as he needs, perhaps.
There's a mystery going on here, and it's an interesting one, and it's one to dive into in the coming days and weeks, because Jean was very unhappy. In fact, I mean, full credit to Simon here, as his session's coming out, and it's one of the earlier ones, Simon sort of, as we're going up to her, and I'm maybe absentmindedly doing something else, and Simon tells me, "Hey, look, he looks mad. He looks unhappy." And I spring into action. I go immediately ask him, "You look mad. What you mad about?" And he tells us what he's mad about. So his perception is that no new stuff came in. Like, there's just nothing new to try. It was a waste of a day. And it's quite an important day, end of season test at a track that you've just done a full race weekend in. There is no better time, literally no better time to compare this stuff to other stuff. Instead, what's coming is coming for a private test at Jerez slightly later. So it's not holidays for them yet. Joan Zarco had something new, a chassis, I think, that he tried and didn't like, but I'm not sure that it's not a chassis that the works guys haven't already dismissed at some point in the past. I mean, that would make sense, the most sense to me, because you would, even though Zarco has been the best Honda rider this season, you would put the new stuff still in the works guys' hands first. Luca Marini when I put Joan's words to him, was like, well, I've had new stuff to try, and it was pretty good. And I'll have more in Jerez. He was genuinely very, very positive. It's outside of even the specific details of who had what, there was a perceived difference in mood. I am most interested also in the mood of the one guy who we did not hear from. Aleix Spargaro was on the Honda for the first time today. Looked great, man. I mean, just looking at the timing screens where he was, it left a pretty positive impression on me, and I don't think I'm alone on that. It just looked good.
Also actually looked good as well, because he had an absolutely gorgeous white helmet and leathers combo with a Japanese flag, and so actually looked good as well. But I think everyone was quite impressed with that, even though it's Barcelona. It's the Aleix circuit to go quick at, but still very impressive. And he did it really early on, like he was top 10 most of the day. So the time to adapt to the bike was like 10 laps, which is maybe even the most impressive bit of the day for me.
I do feel like as well, I'm assuming he might be in the mix for wildcards with Honda if things are...
He is.
He is absolutely doing it. Great. Good choice.
Honda will use up all 6, I imagine, because they already did this season with Stefan Bradl, but Stefan Bradl will not run a single one of them. He's done, basically, so it will be split between Aleix and Taka, and I presume it will mostly go to Aleix, whereas on the Yamaha side, Augusto Fernandez will do all 6 wildcards.
Augusto Fernandez, who still hasn't been announced as their test rider, but was here today in Yamaha colours.
Yeah, I didn't catch him. It was.
I'd imagine the Honda thing will go like 4 and 2, partly because so much of the championship is European centered. But I think Taka will do Motegi because he'll do a lot of testing there, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does like a Sepang or somewhere else in Asia that he's going to be doing a bit of testing at, because it sounds like he's also going to Sepang maybe over winter to do some private testing there before we go into shakedown and all that jazz at the start of next season.
There's a small Taka related factoid that really summed up the time-limited but existent joy of today. And the time-limited because by the end of the test we're all tired and we all don't want to see bikes or watch bikes or think about bikes. But at the start of the day, all the riders in this test in particular coming out in their new colors, especially the ones who are already allowed to have, the correct color scheme, the correct sponsors, etc., sort of as a preview of next season. Taka's not going to be riding, but Taka in like official Honda Racing Corporation sort of engineer like clothing is such an interesting sight. It really stopped me in my tracks in the paddock, and when I saw it on TV.
Honda do not need to employ anyone to model their merchandise for next year, because he looked so good in the engineer's clothing. He was like a Hollywood version of a Japanese engineer. He just looked perfect in it.
2 points for me. Agreed on Taka's swag. He looked so good. His hair looked amazing. The picture I saw, he was like looking at a computer, and I was like, wow. The second point after fangirling over Taka was, if Augusto Fernandez is doing all the wild cards, does that mean we have seen the last of Cal Crutchlow?
Yeah.
Where's Cal?
It's kind of been unsaid, but yeah, and also the final part of that today is obviously he's lost his number as well.
That's sad.
His chapter's 35.
Oh yeah.
So it's gone unsaid, but yeah, he's also gone basically because of that injury he's had all season that's kind of persisted in keeping him out of any wild cards. The one that let Remy Gardner come in his place. It seems like Cal's just done.
But will he still be testing and everything alongside Augusto?
To be confirmed. I think he's contracted for next year because they signed him in a 3-year contract. So he's still contracted, but we haven't heard. He wasn't here. We haven't seen him. We haven't heard from him. He hasn't been to any race this year. He's very absent from the whole project now.
He has been mentioned by Augusto by name as an accomplice. What a weird word to choose, but let's go with that. So has, I should say,
what a dream team.
Yeah, so has Andrea Dovizioso as having a continued involvement with the project, which also does make you think. You wouldn't, if Cal was fully functional or fully operational, fully part of the plans going forward, then also you have Cal and you have Dovi, and all the 6 wildcards are going to Augusto is interesting. I mean, Augusto is one of the most recent experience, obviously, and I mean, he'll do a good job. He's a good test rider in terms of, well, we don't know if he's a good test rider, but he's a good kind of profile rider to hire as a test rider. Makes total sense to me. But all 6, just that raised an eyebrow for me.
Can I start a campaign for Dovi to have a wild card at Misano, please?
I don't think he wants it.
I don't care,
I genuinely
Val.
don't think he does.
Okay.
I think it would be good, and I say so.
I'm just happy that we'll get the Espargaro wildcard at Barcelona, and I'm going to make a Larry prediction. He'll sit 100 in the top 6 at least for a few laps, just out of sheer elationness. Let's end on some appropriate Larry predictions. Check out our YouTube channel, by the way, this week, because Val and Simon have recorded, it's not released yet, might be by the time you hear this podcast, have recorded a brilliant video in the paddock exploring some of the things you might have forgotten about Jorge Martin's route to the World Championship. Not so much this year, but his whole career. There have been more strange things happen in this guy's journey to being world champion than most, really. He's been snubbed more than once. He's had some tough times to get there, so that is well worth a watch, and that is out on our YouTube channel. Obviously, please head to the Members Club. Join us if you're not there already. If you are there already, if you haven't yet voted in the 2006 versus 2015 MotoGP Revisited poll, last time I checked, it was 55% for 2015, 45% for 2006. Anyone want to kind of make a bit of a pitch to swing that? Simon, you really don't want to do 2015, do you?
No, don't do it to me. Don't do it to me, people, please. I beg you.
If you missed our initial announcement of that on the last podcast, next season as an exclusive for the Race Members Club, we'll be reliving an entire MotoGP season in a kind of watch-along, an audio watch-along where us four remind ourselves of what happened and debate it as if it's happening right now. Help us choose the season. If you are wondering when the next race will be, you could just Google. That would be the quickest way, or you could buy the Races MotoGP calendar, which has every round on there. You can cross out a few of them by March, I imagine, but you've got all of them on there now. Pictures from our photo partner Golden Goose, chosen by our roving reporter and designer Ollie Card, and that is also at shop.the-race.com. As it's the Race MotoGP podcast, we should end on Larry predictions. These will be quick fire. You're allowed kind of one word, one sentence maximum. So Oscar Robledo in the Members Club asked, given the lineup for the factory Ducati team, who is your money on for next season and why? So basically, this is the case of Marquez or Pecco Bagnaia for next season. Really, it's going to be one of those